Hey guys, Martin here bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle video, and so today we are going to talk about the upcoming Heroes EZAs that should be releasing in November, I guess. Obviously the Heroes celebration is not a thing anymore as of last year. However, they did confirm when announcing that it was the final Hero celebration that the EZAs for the future units would continue. Now, the thing about that is, of course, whilst they did announce this, they did not in any way, shape or form announce how exactly that was going to take place, right? So we know that the Heroes units that don't have EZAs so far are going to get EZAs, but we are just left to wonder, are they going to do it in the same pattern as before, where we get the series of 7 units from each year's banners going forwards? Because if that is the case, that those are the units we're going to talk about today, we know exactly who is going to be getting the EZAs, but they could be doing something else. Now, one thing I have seen people say, wouldn't it be crazy if they just EZA'd all of the remaining Heroes units that don't have EZAs, which would include all the ones that came out last year. But I mean, the thing is, as I'm a big fan of Heroes, so more Hero stuff at once would be cool. But the problem is, I guess, once those characters EZA, that's it, right? So it would be cool to have them be good for a few months, hopefully good in the anniversary content when it comes out. But then that's it, right? And that's Heroes done and dusted, potentially, almost seemingly forever. Whereas at least if we get them in the same sort of format where we get these set of 7 that we're going to talk about today, then next year we get the next set of 7, and then next year we'd get the last ones. At least that keeps something to look forward to for the Hero stuff, even though it is only a year away. Or, of course, the other possibility is that they do stick to that same schedule with the what units they're going to EZA, but hope maybe they don't leave it an entire year, right? Now, obviously, we seemingly are waiting until November for the Heroes EZAs this time, but I mean, for all we know, they could come out in part 2 of this celebration, which starts later this week. Probably not, but they haven't made any sort of announcement. So there was a year, I think it was when Global was trying to catch up, but there was actually a year, I think JP had it as well though, where there were 2 Heroes banners, 2 celebrations in one year. So there is also the possibility that we get a bunch of these Heroes EZAs in November, and then we just get some more in anywhere from 3 to 6 months maybe. But I think as of right now, without being told anything different and just kind of being left to wonder, I suppose, probably just going to be the case that it will be every November in around the time that the Heroes celebration usually would be. And of course that leaves us with nothing but speculation as to what will take the place of the Heroes banner and the Heroes celebration. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of speculating recently about various different possibilities of crossover celebrations with other crossover characters, the various Xenoverse EZAs and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, as of right now, we do have absolutely no idea what is coming in November, where these guys assumingly are going to get their EZAs. But enough about that. We're going to talk about the 7 units. At the bare minimum, these 7 units are the ones that should EZA. They are from the banner from 2022, or at least awakened in 2022. This is how the Heroes does their set of EZAs. So we've got these units, Hearts, Limit Breaker Goku, Limit Breaker Vegeta. These guys released and awakened straight away on those banners, and then the banner had other new units. Actually, I think Supreme Kai, yeah, these guys actually did EZA straight away. Rebel and Supreme Kai, they EZA'd straight away. And then the other units on the banner were Golden Metal Cooler and Janemba, but they did not awaken. Bardock and Gohan awakened during that celebration. So that's the way they do the 7 EZAs. It was the same with last year. It's the Heroes units that all awakened to TUR during that celebration, which was the 5 new characters that awakened straight away, and then the 2 characters that were actually from previous years and then got their TUR awakenings. I have discussed this a couple of times before, but for this video specifically, I just wanted to focus on kind of the main headliner units and how good their potential EZAs could be, because you take a look at Hearts, for example. He's a unit that I think people, maybe put a bit of respect on his name when he was first out, because he was very good on release. However, this was the year where for the first time, even though the heroes units did of course have these annoying restrictions for having to be run with other heroes allies. This was the first year where they really kind of divided the team into two builds, and they made Hearts very much want to be run with extreme class crossover characters, and then the Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4s wanted to be run with super class characters, which was kind of annoying because even with 7 new units coming out, and obviously there were some EZAs that year as well, you know, you've only got a certain number of units to choose from the heroes or crossover category. So then having to split the team in half, essentially, having to choose between super and extreme was kind of annoying. So that's something that should definitely, I think, be looked at. But Hearts was definitely very good for his time, right? Able to tank like the bosses in the meta at the time. Of course, Heroes has always suffered from this issue of releasing in November and then on JP, almost always then getting power crept by the anniversary content, whereas at least for Global, like they came out in November and they were still usable in the content we had on Global, usually for all the things like Saiyan Day, potentially even Golden Week, because Golden Week would not usually have an anniversary level power creep. And then, yeah, like the Heroes team would age out fairly quickly, but Hearts was still pretty good and had a lot of potential for being run on other teams, right? Because this guy, categories, he's on Resurrected Warriors, Full Power, Transformation Boost, Time Travelers, Dragon Ball Heroes, obviously, and crossover, Battle of Wits, Space Traveling Warriors, and Accelerated Battle. So Accelerated Battle is one of those crazy categories that just gets buffs all the time, with like one of the reasons why Glorio's lead and just like Glorio's team in general can be so good, because so many good characters get Accelerated Battle. So that's a category that kind of always seems to get buffs and is very, very good. Obviously Transformation Boost as well. But things like Space Traveling Warriors, Full Power, Transformation Boost, like these are some categories that could come with future or be incorporated into extreme character leader skills, where this guy could definitely be very, very strong. Because when you look at his passive, he's got some basic stats, then he gives extreme class allies Key 1 and attack and defense 30%. So he's already supporting all extreme class allies that he's on rotation with. So they could either buff this up or give him an extra, like some characters have, you know, like extreme class allies and then an extra 1 key and 30% attack and defense to Time Travelers or Full Power or something like that, right? Then for 5 turns from his entry turn, he has Guard. And he gets an extra 50% within the turn when Guard is activated. So this is essentially like the earlier version of what we're seeing a lot of premium units get now, with the like 100% defense when receiving an attack, because obviously his Guard is active for those early turns. He gets that defense when he receives the attack. The problem, of course, is that, you know, once you are 5 turns or 6 turns in and the Guard runs out, he's obviously not getting that particular buff either. But of course, the idea with this unit is that you transform him once his Guard runs out. Now, when all allies in the same turn are extreme class crossover, all allies 2 key and attack and defense 20%. Okay, so yes, he does actually, I'd forgotten about the last part, he does actually essentially have that for this first part of his passive. He gives extra support to everyone if all allies are extreme crossover, but it's not quite the same thing as giving an extra buff to a specific category, because it is locked behind a condition. So the biggest thing for me for this guy and for some of these other units that are going to get their EZAs for this year is they really need to cut back. And we say this all the time with the Heroes units, and it didn't happen, but I feel like there's more of a likelihood this time. Cutting back on this whole crossover allies or Dragon Ball Heroes allies, because now that Dragon Ball Heroes celebrations aren't going to be a thing, we're not going to be getting new units, we're just going to be getting EZAs for the old units. What is the point of giving this guy an EZA where he has to be run with extreme class crossover characters as part of his passive, but the only other extreme units getting their EZAs are these two, and none of the other Heroes units, I mean, Mechikabra is still kind of okay, but like, none of the other extreme crossover units are really viable anymore. So if you give this guy, if he remains still having extreme class crossover allies as part of his passive, like that part of his passive is basically never going to be active. Unless, of course, you know, one of the theories is that the Dokkan Fest for November will be a crossover, could be Gohan Black, and then he will be an extreme class crossover character. But that's still only one extra character. So then who are you running on the team? Gohan Black, this guy, and they potentially don't link very well. Mechikabra, maybe, and then having to run both of these two. And I mean, we'll talk about EZA lack of potential, I guess. So yeah, it just doesn't work, right? Now, obviously they could still do that, but they have fixed these kind of issues with EZAs in the past. And the biggest thing would be when all allies in the same turn are extreme class or crossover category. You literally, by adding one word into this, it changes it completely, because it means he can either be run with crossover allies even if they're super types, and he still gives the allies support. Obviously the super types wouldn't get this part, but they would get this part. Or if the team is full extreme, of regardless of any category, then they're all going to be getting 3 key and 50% attack and defense, and that's if they don't put the numbers for that actual support up. So straight away, that makes him become a viable option, even just as a floating support unit on teams, because he raises defense on super and has guard for a certain amount of turns. Now, ideally he'd get permanent guard, but maybe that's asking a bit too much, because his transformation, starting from turn 3 if all allies are extreme class, which is actually great, like it's not extreme class crossover, or starting from the 5th turn if he receives 5 or more attacks. So I mean, if you're just going to be running him on an extreme team, that's fine. If they do change his passive so he's viable on super class crossover teams, then he would still have to be 5th turn after getting hit, but that's probably not the end of the world, I guess. But then once he transforms and turns into Ultimate Hearts, the Ultimate Godslayer, which is an awesome name for a unit, greatly raises attack and raises defense for 1 turn. So, I mean, you'd assume this would go up to greatly raise attack and defense, maybe even for 3 turns. That'd be great. And then on his first turn when he transforms, he keeps the guard. This was a new thing they kind of introduced a while back for characters that transformed that would have guard for a certain number of turns and then didn't have guard when they transformed, because there would be almost like a weird sort of layover. Because if you're on turn 5, base Hearts should have guard, and then when you transform him, Ultimate Hearts wouldn't have guard, but I think there was like a weird way it interacted where he would then still have guard because he had it at the start of the turn before he transformed. So to make it clearer and to make it like a deliberate thing, they just made it so the unit actually has guard for the turn. I think they updated like Tech Janemba, I believe, to have the same thing. I can't remember if it was him. It was definitely someone else. But then, yeah, he gets key and stats, more stats when attacking. When all allies in the same turn are extreme class crossover, he gets extra attack and disables the enemy's guard. When all allies are extreme class, he gets the extra super. And when there's a Realm of Gods enemy, attacks effective against all types. I mean, this is one of those conditions that is hard to get, but isn't really important. Like, it doesn't make him suddenly a bad unit if his attacks aren't effective against all types. The extreme class crossover, again, if they made this extreme class or crossover and then made it attack and defense, like, this would be pretty awesome. And then he's not doing much else outside of that, so there's the potential in there to give him some other sort of like extra ability. Launching an additional attack with the extreme class allies is really good because of course it makes the chance to get the hidden potential additional that little bit higher. So I feel like this guy could be really, really good with the teams that he could then potentially end up being on. I should have double checked on like Dokkan info what, let me bring that up on a separate window here quickly, what 200% leaders he is actually on, or 220 leaders he's on, I guess, as of right now. Because obviously the big thing is we're currently in the baby celebration and we're waiting to see who the part 2 LR is going to be. Ideally a corroded body and mind character to help out baby's team, which of course this guy doesn't factor into. But his 200% leaders, yeah, well, he's on full power, so he's on Gohan's team, but Gohan's a super class character. In terms of extreme class characters, he doesn't actually have any like meta relevant leaders at all currently. His extreme class leaders are like Physical Rose, Harudagan. In hit, he's on his team, but only on the accelerated battle part. So obviously he gets 200% HP, but only 170 attack and defense. So that's the thing. If the units, for some of these units to have a real chance at being good again, the unit that comes out in November, whatever it is, even if it's not a crossover character, he could just be a leader that has like transformation boost and space traveling warriors or something like that, which we see a lot of characters have. Characters like Coolers and Bojacks and stuff like that will often have those kind of categories in their leader skill. So this guy has the chance to be good again if his EZA is good. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how good he is going to be, because yeah, he has a lot of potential. Now, when it comes to the Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4s, again, they made a similar mistake with like all allies attacking in the same turn are super class full power or Dragon Ball heroes, and it can't be mixed. So if you have one super class full power and one super class hero ally, this doesn't proc. They have to both be the same. So ideally they changed this to just when all allies in the same turn are superclass, or when there is a full power or heroes ally, because then it can be procced in like multiple different ways. And then of course it allows you to run him on a full superclass giant 8 power team, because that's the problem. This guy doesn't actually have synergy with a giant 8 power team unless they're all heroes, whereas the Vegeta, his one is giant 8 power or heroes instead of full power. So this guy has synergy with a full power team if they're not heroes units, but obviously then with links like Saiyan Raw and stuff like that, you kind of open yourself up to him not being in an optimal setup. Whereas this guy, you know, giant 8 power, we're still patient. I say patiently, some people not very patiently, but patiently awaiting the Daima stuff to finally come to Dokkan and bring, you know, more buffs for the giant 8 power team. So these guys, I think, are very, very highly anticipated EZAs. They were kind of fumbled on release. Like when you read Goku's kit, it feels like he's designed to be a slot 1 unit, because he needs to receive 7 or more attacks in order to get his full passive build up. And then obviously he starts with like, he has some damage reduction. But of course he then gets a decent, I mean it's only 60%, but this is a unit that's like 3 years old, gets a buff on attack, which then obviously isn't helpful if he's a slot 1 unit. And then, yeah, if there's a Vegeta on rotation, he's also buffing the superclass allies, including himself, with extra defense. But the problem is, these guys released, and Goku's design makes it look like he's a slot 1 unit, and Vegeta's the slot 2 who's supposed to go next to him for their links, because Vegeta very much a slot 2 unit, gets stats on attacking, can get an additional super attack, and therefore raises attack and defense even more. He supports allies with attacks, and his build-up is just him performing super attacks. So he's a great unit in slot 2 or 3, Goku doesn't really work in slot 1 against any tough bosses. Like even from release, he was essentially, on the year he came out, for that superclass split where you're not using hearts and some of the other extreme characters, like he was kind of supposed to be the slot 1 for that superclass heroes team, and he just wasn't particularly good at it. So Dokkan has been kind of fumbling a little bit recently when it comes to really, really good slot 1 characters. So like I say, make this condition easier to fulfill with a decent bit of damage reduction, maybe slightly higher, or even, to be honest, keep it the same, but just give him, like, before attacking, he gets, like, I don't know, 40% damage reduction, and then when he receives a hit, give him that, like, you know, 200% defense when receiving an attack or something, or even when attacking, because if he's going to have extra damage reduction before he attacks, then when attacking, make this, like, attack and defense, like, 200% or something, right? Because then after he attacks, he's still only going to have the base damage reduction, but at least his defense after attacking will be relatively high. The problem is, even in the current meta, bosses are hitting so hard now, that probably wouldn't be enough. So whilst it sounds almost like a meme, it's the kind of thing that the community had asked every EZA to have forever from a certain year onwards. Honestly, giving this guy guard is probably a good idea if he's supposed to be a slot 1 unit, even if it is conditional, but just make the condition easy, right? Like the allies, like this thing here. Again, make it just all superclass or a full power or a Dragon Ball hero, extra attack and defense, damage reduction, and guard or something, right? Because then realistically, they're the only situations you're going to run him in anyway. But yeah, this guy would need a lot of work to be a viable slot 1 unit. Otherwise, they just need to make some tweaks so that he's clearly not supposed to be a slot 1 unit and is just good for dealing damage, which means this needs to drop drastically. Because if a unit's not in slot 1, in a lot of events, it's like good luck taking 7 attacks in the first like 2 or 3 turns, right? Whereas Vegeta, I feel like, is in a pretty good spot. He's guaranteed getting 2 super attacks every turn. So, I mean, if you made this 4... you're guaranteed that after his first 2 appearances, even if you don't get any hidden potential, he's still going to do it. So Vegeta, I think, is in a spot where he's probably easier to be a good EZA than Goku, because Goku was kind of meant to be a slot 1 and wasn't very good at it, whereas Vegeta was meant to be slot 2 or 3 and was okay at that role when he came out, right? Then we've got Bardock and Gohan. I don't want to spend too much time on Bardock because his category, his like passive is such a blank, I say a blank slate. It's just, there's not a lot there, right? He's got stats. He gets extra stats when there's 2 or more crossover allies. Then he gets extra stats when your HP is 50% or more. Attacks effective against all types when HP is 70% or more. And then a crit when HP is 90% or more. Medium chance to dodge when there's another giant 8 power ally in the same turn. This is all pretty like, you know, not great. If it's going to be restricted to being a giant 8 power ally on the rotation, like make it great chance, because it's not like he's not good defensively. So in tough events, if he doesn't dodge, then GG, right? And if you're less than 50% HP at the start of the turn, because this isn't when attacking, he's already going to lose an extra 100% attack and defense. So unfortunately, as much as I love Bardock and would really like this EZA to be good, I feel like there's not a lot of ways that they're going to make this guy good. And I mean, they really could go all out and just, you know, really put in the work and make his passive, you know, quite different. I mean, they always keep the basis of what a unit is, right? So he's going to get extra buffs when you have a certain amount of stats, right? But they could tweak it in a lot of different ways. The extra stats, I think the HP restriction for that maybe could be a little bit lower, so you know you're going to get it. Maybe give him like some defense when he gets hit, so even if you do miss that, like if you're on low HP at the start of the turn, he still does get some extra defense. And then yeah, the dodge chance definitely needs to be bigger. Maybe make him like a real big stats on super kind of character. Make his super attack like massively raise attack and defense for one turn, and then one of his HP conditions could be like an additional super or something. I don't know. Maybe he could build up like damage reduction or something by taking hits, maybe, because then if you don't dodge, at least early on, you're then building up a little bit of extra defensive backup. But yeah, unfortunately, as much as I do like Bardock, I can't see a lot of chance of this guy being good. Gohan, however, 50% damage reduction when there's 2 or more great 8 power allies, extra defense and chance to stun when performing a super, additional 100% attack when there's a crossover ally. I mean, he's kind of meant to be a tank, so if he keeps that where he gets extra attack with crossover allies, it's not the end of the world, because it's not like the only thing about it. Like, you're not putting him on the team to do damage, basically, right? But he has a lot of potential. He aged out fairly quickly because, as we've seen with characters that have damage reduction in the meta, like 50%, if you're not backing it up with already insanely high levels of defense, just like isn't good enough, right? So this needs to go up or potentially build up from 50, maybe even have like, again, the before attacking, so it makes it like very clear and set that he's supposed to be your solid slot 1 unit. But he definitely has potential. He raises attack and defense on super. He can stun with his attack, so it'll only be for the duration of the turn. But obviously there are some events where the enemy can still be stunned, so that can be obviously very helpful. But yeah, Gohan is one of the ones that I'm very much hoping for in terms of potential. Hearts is probably right up there. Gohan is probably next in line. These are like the two that I think have the best chance to be good. These two, it just entirely depends how much they really want to, like, you know, lock in and actually make these guys good. And Bardock, I fear, even with an attempt to try and make him good, I don't think they'll go crazy on a guy that was just one of the unfeatured, like, banner units. But, I mean, Bardock is a popular character, I don't know. But, like, they know Broly's a popular character, and Limit Breaker Broly on release was pretty mid. So it's hard to say what they would do, to be honest. And then the last two we've already shown, obviously Robel and Supreme Kai of Time. I'll talk about Supreme Kai of Time first because it will just be very quick. I don't see how she can really be good at all unless they completely like revamp her passive, because her entire passive is revolving around getting buffed by the enemy being under certain status effects, like attack down, defense down, stunned and sealed, which, yes, there are some fights that you can still do that, or some events, although for a lot of those it's only in 1 or 2 of the phases and not the entire fight. So then you get to like the final phase when the boss is at their toughest and she's not getting all of her buffs. So this is another unit that, in order to make her, I say, I guess to use the term, like meta relevant, like, yeah, her whole passive would just need to be entirely revamped, which for these heroes EZAs I think is very unlikely. Like, there is the potential that they could be good, you know, like average good, okay, better than mid kind of level, but like, yeah, meta relevant, probably unlikely for her. Now Robel, on the other hand, I think there is some potential here for her. Because, like, the big meme with her, I mean, we had the whole Rosell memes on the channel when we were trying out the Heroes Challenges because of her not dodging or her not getting the Scouter. This is probably one of the worst. It's kind of like Super 17 having that high chance to get key, where, like, very few other units in the game have ever been given this ability, and you just wonder why it exists because it's really dumb, which is the high chance, or hers is great chance of foreseeing enemy super attacks. So the problem with that is that, I guess in older events it was the problem. I mean, it can still happen sometimes now, but usually bosses are super attacking every turn. But the problem with her on release was the fact that, like, if there was no super attack visible on the turn, because of the way it used to work with the passives and everything, and the way icons were shown at the bottom and stuff like that, you wouldn't know if there was no super attack on the turn. You'd have no idea whether that was because the enemy isn't supering you, or that her passive didn't go off and you're not actually getting the scouter. I can't remember if now, with all those new icons that appear at the bottom, like, you know, knowing whether your unit is guarding, is there one for scouter being active? I don't think there is. If there is, then obviously that would be helpful. But like I say, nowadays, most bosses are super attacking at least once every turn anyway. But yeah, this ability is dumb. This needs to just be foresees enemy super attacks, especially when it was conditional as well. It was required on there being another hero's ally in the same turn. Like, you'd think it could at least be guaranteed with a hero's ally in the same turn and then conditional otherwise, right? So I could see this being updated. You could potentially make it be guaranteed when there is a Dragon Ball hero ally, or maybe all allies are extreme, because again, moving away from just being restricted to heroes characters, I think would obviously be very, very good. But yeah, I mean, she has potential. She's an orb changer. She gets extra defense and heals with rainbow orbs that she creates. She has a high chance to dodge. So, I mean, that could go up to great. Even though her stats aren't the best, she does greatly raise attack and defense on super. So, like, when we were doing the challenges, it was back in the day when, like, the Sin Shenron fight was the hardest fight on Global. And shout out to everyone who was there for those streams. We spent pretty much, like, the whole summer of me streaming almost every evening trying to beat the Sin event with the Heroes team that was out at the time. And, like, post-super, she could tank those harder-hitting normals in that event for double-digit damage. So her stats post-super have never been terrible, but obviously for those fights with, like, the AoEs and, like, if you have to put her in slot 1 because of a bad starting rotation or something, she only had a high chance to dodge and hadn't supered yet. So, yeah, the number of times, like, she didn't dodge Omega AoEs, and that would be essentially the reason why we would die, hence the Rosell memes. But, like, she's on Peppy Gals, Time Travelers, Crossover, Demonic Power, and Mission Execution. So with her being on Demonic Power and Mission Execution, I guess, like with Tau, if you give her stuff in her passive where instead of just having Dragon Ball Heroes, this can be procced with, like, an All Extreme Allies rotation or something like that, then she actually would have a lot of potential for a future Demonic Power team, especially with the release of, you know, a Goma in the future, for example, who I imagine would have Demonic Power as part of his leader skill, considering he becomes the new king of the Demon Realm. It'd be very weird for him to not have Demonic Power as part of his leader skill. Obviously, he'll be on the category, but he should have it as a lead. I mean, if he's a Carnival LR, I would almost 100% guess that his leader skill would be Demonic Power 220. So she has the potential to be really, really good. And Supreme Kai of Time, whilst we said, like, she doesn't really have a lot of potential, I don't think, but she's on Mission Execution and she's on Corroded Body and Mind. So she'd be great for Baby's team if her EZA is actually good. The only thing I could think they could do is give her a ton of support, and then I guess just give her some of these stat boosts, like, for free, or if there's extreme allies or something, or Corroded Body and Mind allies even, and then maybe a couple of buffs that she gets if the enemy is stun, sealed, or attack lowered or anything. She does have the chance to stun all enemies, but obviously it's 10%, which, you know, that could be handy. Just buff it. There's so few events where the enemy can be stunned. Make it like 50% chance. Maybe make it like 25% chance to stun all enemies, 50% chance if all allies on the rotation are Corroded Body and Mind. Still pretty limited, but kind of cool for Baby's team. But there are so few events that stun, like, that can be stunned. It's not like it's a game-breaking thing, right? So, I don't know. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Who do you think has the most potential to be a good EZA? I do very much think that it could be Hearts, although his teams are limited. So maybe it is actually Gohan is, like, the #1 potential. Depending on what they do with his restrictions, of course, because even with this crossover one, attack not really mattering, Giant 8 Power is going to be a team that will continue to still be strong for a while. So this guy could be a really good addition. And then, yeah, honestly, with a good EZA, like, Robel could be really good on some teams as well. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Which of these 7 are you most looking forward to? How do you think they're going to do the EZAs? Obviously, as we discussed at the beginning, do you think we're just going to get these 7 in November and then that's it until next November? How do you think they will do it? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comment section. And of course, as always, we will keep the Heroes Agenda alive. Whatever they do with these Heroes EZAs, you know I'm going to be taking them into all the events we can once the EZAs do finally come out, and hopefully they will be good, but I guess we will have to wait and see. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, check out the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.